Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now today we're going to cover how you can get something approximating the Vostroyans from Games Workshop by using Les Grognards from Wargames Atlantic. Now there is a very cool video by Pete the Wargamer where he actually converts these miniatures, adds a couple of Citadel parts to them, I think it's some of the Skitari arms, to get a slightly more 40k looking miniature, but I reckon you can use them quite happily just out of the box as they are. And the end result, well, there he is. Looks pretty cool to me. So if you do want to pick up an army of these guys, Wargames Atlantic is shipping worldwide at the moment. It's pretty easy, and you do get a ton in the box. So let's crack the paints out. All of these will be listed in the description below. Let's get started. So once you've assembled your fella, the first thing to do is to go ahead and prime him with a black spray. Now, it does not matter what you use. I've used here matte black from the Army Painter, but it's black. You know, it's not something that you have to worry too much about which brand of black you're matching. But there is one thing we're going to do first to make it a little easier to see what we're doing and to soften some of the shading. So any areas where we might miss with our brush later on, we don't have to worry too much about it because it's going to be a slightly muted brown in there rather than a harsh black. So what I have here is some dryad bark that I've watered down roughly 6 or 7 parts water to 1 part of paint. You really want it to just look like a slightly thick shade. What we're going to do is jam this fairly generously over the entire miniature, and you're going to see it looks awful going on. And it can be a little hard to tell how it's going to look when you're finished. But like I said, don't worry, we're going to paint over most of these details anyhow. This is just to help our eye as we're working and soften some of those recesses. So away we go. Let's cover this whole thing. And I don't want it to pull up too much on his face, so I'll draw some of that away with my brush. But yeah, let's come back once this has had a chance to dry. You'll see how much that mellows compared to how it looks going on. So we've softened the recesses, and I can see a little more clearly what on earth I'm doing. But we're not finished with the dryad bark just yet. I'm going to apply a slightly more solid coat of it over the rifle, because I want that to be a dark wood. Now there are a lot of ways of painting wood. Honestly, it's up to you which you like the look of, but because I'm going for quite a dark aspect with these guys overall, a dark wood is a good start. Now, on the official Vostroyan miniatures, you don't normally see an awful lot of their trousers, but on these guys, you do see little sneaky peeks, and it's a good idea to colour them in with something. So I'm using Steel Legion Drab here, and you'll see this goes over quite nicely. I'm also going to use this to paint in the roll that's on his pack. Now, I'm going to try and avoid the gaps in between, because if I can avoid having to paint those again with a different brown, all the better. If you've got any fellas that have exposed faces, then you can paint their skin in with a little bit of Bugman's Glow. Now, some of these guys are going to have quite impressive moustaches too. Just paint straight over the top of them, because we can fix up the moustache color with a hair color later on. Now, some of these guys, I don't know. It's up to you if you do want to go with them wearing gloves. But they don't, like, to my eye, they don't look like they're wearing gloves. They look like their hands are exposed. So that's how I'm going to paint them. I think this will add a little bit of visual interest to the front of the miniature. Now, sometimes when it comes to what color to paint the main body first, it can be a little bit difficult to decide. I'm genuinely not sure whether it would be simpler here to paint the brassy color of his armor and then his jacket, or the other way around. If you've got a fellow who's got chainmail or something similar, you're painting an official Vostroyan, I'd say start with that, because in against the chest, you're going to find it easier to clean up by doing that first. But some of the yellow and gold details that I want to do on this guy are going to be over the red. So I'm going to paint his jacket first here. I have Mephiston red, and this is going to cover pretty well, but I will likely need to do 2 coats of this. You'll see a little bit of the primer still showing through there. This is a lot different from back in the day when you used to have to do 27 to 40 coats of red. Who sticks around for I remember when? Anyhow. I always really like the stage when you get the first major color on a miniature. It just makes them look so much cooler. We'll move on now, and finally we will start applying that brassy color. And for this I'm going to use Balthazar Gold. Now this is an abjectly dreadful gold color, but a wonderful brass, and it's nice and warm, So I'm going to apply this fairly quickly over all of the bits I want to be that brassy metal. Now, if you don't have Balthazar gold, you can also here use Retributor armor. The main difference is that it's going to be a little warmer, a little more gold, but you might like that look. Now, especially when it comes to the chest piece, just try and avoid the gun itself. The webbing and pouches and what have you, you can paint straight over the top of those. It's not going to matter. If there is a slow part, that's likely it. It's important here that you do let each coat dry thoroughly before you apply the next one over the top, particularly with metallics, because you're going to leave visible brush strokes even on just 2 coats. So put one over. Balthazar gold will normally dry a little bit translucent, but a second coat and you'll be fine. So I have now Mournfang brown, and the color of the bear skin up here is really, I say it all the time, but it is your choice. Bear skins, they were all sorts of colors, and even the official Vostroyan miniatures, they show them with a few different choices. So Mournfang brown's a good middle ground, particularly because I've got plans for the hanging doobly bopper there. Very important that the naming convention is followed. But just brown over the whole thing, ignoring this little, I'm going to paint this up as like a aerial or something, so it's going to be metallic. I don't need to brown that, but all the rest, just go over now. Now that's not a great look to start with, but as always, we're going to do a little more to it. Now moving on to the leather details, the order in which you do the next few things doesn't matter too much, so that's where I'm going to start. I'm using a Vallejo color. This is mahogany brown. Now this is one of my favorite leathery sorts of colors. See, it's quite bright going on, but it will darken a little as it dries. And then when we shade it, it's going to be even darker still. If you want something similar to this from the Citadel range, then Night Quest or Flesh is quite close. Or Fur Brown from the Army Painter is a nice match for this, which is a little lighter, I would say, but works well for the same thing. So all of the little pouches, any straps that I can reach, let's paint those in now. Now I've got Avaland Sunset, and we'll paint in some of the yellow details. Now this is where painting a little bit of brown first is going to come in handy, because this will cover slightly better than it would over straight black. So I'm going to paint in the cord here, as well there's a tiny wee regimental marking up there, which I guess you could paint any color you want, but I'm going to paint yellow because it's on my brush and I'm very lazy. Now finally, and really one of the last base coats we're going to apply, I have Iron Hand Steel. This is a nice light metallic color, really good for pretty much everything. What I'm going to do is pick a few parts on the weapon that I want to look like they are metallic, funnily enough, but also little details like this transmitter thing on the side of his bear skin, and any other little details which might benefit from standing out a bit more from their surroundings. So silver here, silver there. You pick what you like the look of and go nuts. Now once you've done that, decided on which bits you want to be silver, I've gone around and done a little bit of tidy up. So I did patch in his straps here with a little bit of dryad bark, and I decided, dryad bark for his moustache, that'll do just fine. What we'll do now is apply the shade, and for this I've shaken up, it's always exciting, this is a brand new pot of Agrax Earthshade, so shaking it for a little while, and we're going to apply this generously over the entire miniature. So really carefully, just like that, really work it into any recesses. Any areas where it collects, like on his on his coat for example, if you get big splotches like that, you can guide it around a little while it's still wet. What's important is that you do give everything a roughly equal soaking of this. So once you've done that, and this is all bathed in the magic brown goo, I'm going to put them somewhere to dry for about half an hour. And through the magic of television, there is our shaded Vostroyan. Now that's a little darker than you might like, I would say. If you're looking to get a chunk of these guys on the table very quickly, then that's not going to look too bad. I'd say a matte varnish and he'll be fine. But I do want to take this a little bit further. So I'm going back to a couple of the base colors to lighten them up. So what I'm going to do here, the Bugman's Glow that we used earlier, I'm going to use this to brighten up most of the skin, but leave the gaps and recesses as they are. So you'll see carefully over the fingers. When we come to the face, what I can do is just blop in his nose and pretty much a straight line down the side of his face here because of the moustache in the way, and a little bit on his chin. And we're going to do that as well to the Mephiston red, because I think some areas it's a little darker than I would like. So you don't need to be terribly careful with this. Just steer away from the recesses that you want to stay shaded. You don't want very much of this on your brush at a time either. We'll give you a bit more control that way. So let's straighten out some of his jacket. Now that's going to brighten things up quite a bit, and you'll see that we do have some of that slight satin finish in the recesses. Like I said, a varnish later will fix that right up. Now what I've got is a little bit of Tyrant Skull on a small dry brush, and I'm going to lightly flick over both the yellow and the brown on his bearskin here. You see it's a pretty good color for the yellow itself. Just catching the edges there, making that look a little brighter, and go easy on the hat. And you'll find you can highlight them both together. Now, that's nice and quick, and if you reckon they didn't dry brush the hats on the metal Vostroyans, I doubt that very much. Of course they did. Now, what I've got is some Liberator Gold, and I'm going to highlight the brassy stuff that we've done. Now, you could also use here Sycorax Bronze would look quite nice. I'd suggest a lot more pale. Liberator Gold has got a little bit of yellowish to it. Which works quite well, but I'm just going to catch edges and make this look a little bit shinier at those high points. Whispering as I do it, of course. So you can use this to catch the detail on the rifle and the armor, and any van braces if you have painted those bits in as well. Now for his chest piece and the brass plate on his bearskin there, I've added a little bit more by slowly flicking down towards the edge. On the shoulder pads, though, I've highlighted those a little more traditionally, just by plucking out the edges. So, up to you which you like the look of. I have now some Cadian flesh tone, and I'm going to use this to add just a little more depth to his skin. So, just painting in the back of his knuckles, a few little dibs and dabs here and there. And we'll also catch his nose, the very tip of his nose, just the top part of his cheekbones, and we'll do in his chin as well. Now at this stage I'd say you could base him up and put him on the table. I mean, could have done that ages ago. But there is one last stage I want to go to, and that is to highlight the red. Now in this case I'm going to go up quite high to Wild Rider Red, and this is so bright it is almost orange. So what I'd recommend is, because it goes on much brighter than it looks as it dries, so put on a little bit, let it dry for a few seconds, and then hold it back at arm's length to see if you're going to like how that looks. The cool thing here, though, is because we have used, as you'll see, Mephiston Red to tidy up some of what we've done so far. If your highlights are a little too thick, or you put them on somewhere you don't want them, you can just go straight back over them with some Mephiston Red in a second or so. But I'm going to go around now and just pick out a few areas where a little bit of extra color is going to really make this red sing. You'll probably see I haven't been quite as daring with those highlights as I ordinarily would be. In particular, around the back, just a few little flicks here and there. We are going for something which is going to be striking at table distance. It's kind of the hard part with doing these videos, is sometimes it just doesn't look very good on camera. But believe me, it's going to look cool on the table. Now from here, if you did want to highlight the leather, funnily enough, a little bit of Bugman's Glow on the corner of that mahogany brown will work quite well. Same too, you could highlight the metallic stuff, but I don't think we're going to need to. This is about as far as I want to take it, and as an army, he'll look brilliant. So what I am going to do is take him outside, hit him with a matte varnish, and then pop a quick base on him. I'll make sure that the recipe for that one is in the description though. It's nice and simple. And there at last, our totally not Vostroyan is complete. And whether you choose to use this method to paint the official miniatures or something third-party, like the admittedly very cool Grognards from Wargames Atlantic, well, the method is much the same. And I've really enjoyed doing this guy. It's been a while since I've painted anything red, and I love doing it. Red's one of my favorite colors. Really easy to set everything off with that nice brassy color. And just a couple of extra little details. He's golden. He's looking really cool. A whole army like this will look brilliant. And the cool thing is Wargames Atlantic fairly recently did release a heavy weapons box and command kit for these guys as well, so you aren't going to be lacking for anything infantry-wise on the table. So, as always, thank you very much to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all of the patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, including my wonderful producers, Ellen Nuttall, Kyrie Crawford, Trainboy, Rod, and Jimmy. Your support lets me keep finding odd little miniatures like this. Any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the old box below. My Twitter and Instagram are both linked there too. So, thank you very much for your time, one and all, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.